Hello, I'm Matt Galloway, and this is The Current Podcast. It's just over 5 weeks before the U.S. election when our neighbors south of the border make a choice between two very different candidates. It is a contest my next guest knows all too well. She says the stakes are higher than ever. She is the former First Lady of the United States, former U.S. Secretary of State, and the first woman to be a major party nominee for President of the United States, Hillary Rodham Clinton. Thank you for taking time to talk to us. I'm really glad to have the chance to speak with you.
I am glad to talk with you, Matt. Thanks for inviting me.
Let's begin with the news of the day. This is looking at one of the most consequential elections in U.S. history. And in your book, you say the prospect of a Trumpy future should scare you. What are you most scared of if Donald Trump wins this election?
I'm most scared that what he says he wants to do and what his supporters and enablers have put forth in something called Project 2025 will be able to be implemented because he will have no guardrails. He will not have even the kind of people he had around him last time who tried to put brakes on some of his proposed illegal and dangerous ideas. And so I think what we're worried about, Matt, is that he will go further than he already has in denying that he's accountable to anyone for anything. He will be very likely to further undermine the rule of law and our Constitution and act with impunity for whatever he hopes to achieve, including limiting the press, going after people he considers his political opponents, and everything else. Reproductive
rights is a huge issue in this election, and it's something that you write about in the book. You talk about meeting survivors of a dictatorship in Romania where women were subjected to examinations to check if they were using contraceptives or if they were pregnant. Is that where you think the United States is heading? It sounds like something out of The Handmaid's Tale.
It is out of The Handmaid's Tale, and, salute your fellow Canadian, Margaret Atwood, for sounding the alarm years ago, but whoever thought it would be on the brink of reality. We have states in our country that have essentially banned abortion, that will prosecute doctors, nurses, hospitals if they try to intervene to save a mother's life, to protect her health, to provide the medical care that she needs. We have state officials saying things like they want to pass laws prohibiting women from leaving their state to go to a state where they can get appropriate medical care, including abortions. So this is in the real world right now in half the United States, as I write in the book. And it's so deeply distressing because we already have validated 2 deaths from women who were denied the care they needed because doctors were afraid to proceed to do what medically should have been done. We have a number of women, including those featured in a film I'm supporting called Zawalski versus Texas, who suffered, very severe health consequences from being denied health care. So, unfortunately, this is not in the realm of novels. This is what very likely will happen if they have Trump in the White House to give them either the go-ahead or basically turn the other way.
And yet the reality is that tens of millions of Americans will vote for Donald Trump on the 5th of November. The polls show that this is a very, very tight race, as a horse race, but also in those swing states. And I just wonder, what do you understand about who those people are that are going to vote for Trump?
Well, I think they are in a number of different categories. I think there are people who subscribe to his proposed agenda. They agree with the draconian prohibitions about abortion. They are in support of the huge tax cuts that he wants to give to billionaires and other wealthy people. They actually agree with what they believe he is likely to do. I think there are others who, feel that their needs are being overlooked, that they are not getting ahead economically to the extent that they would prefer. And they think that he is a kind of disruptor who will disrupt the system and enable them to have a better future. There are people who totally agree with his vile language about immigrants and migrants and don't see the irony that he stopped a very comprehensive border reform law from passing because he'd rather have a problem than an issue. And then there are people who are quite in agreement with him on targeting minorities, women, migrants, the LGBTQ community. It's really a mix of reasons why people show up for him, say they intend to vote for him.
Do you understand where they're coming from? I mean, one of the things that Trump supporters will point to is your comment from 2026, labeling some of them a basket of deplorables. And they will say that that's a sign of the polarization that grips the United States right now. And you wrote this week that it was an unfortunate choice of words and bad politics, but also got at an important truth. What did that phrase get at, do you think?
It got at the truth that Trump is allied with white supremacists and neo-Nazis, with unrepentant racists, with misogynists. And, I said half of his supporters. And as I write in the book and as it was excerpted in the Washington Post this week, maybe it wasn't the best politics. But here's a guy who has called people names from, sun up to sundown, who assaults people verbally, who encourages his crowds to assault people literally physically. So my comment was actually pretty mild. But of course, if people took offense at it, maybe it's because I hit the nail on the head. The people who support him are, as I said earlier, very much in different categories. But there is no doubt that he has allied himself with some of the worst elements and forces in our society. So I don't take back what I said about the kinds of people that he not only attracts, but allies himself with. That I didn't mean to describe all of his supporters, and there are people who feel unheard, unseen, that they don't think that their government works for them. That's absolutely appropriate. I'm just sorry that they would be supporting a con man who has little interest in doing anything real to help them.
What would a victory by Kamala Harris mean for you personally? You've talked about what it would mean for the United States. What would it mean for you personally to see her win, to see her beat him?
It would be a great achievement for our country. I've known her a long time. I am doing everything I can to help her get elected. I think she's got the character and the values to be the kind of president that we need. And she says over and over again, she wants to be a president for all the people. And when she defeats Trump, maybe the fever will break. Maybe we can begin to find some common ground again. Maybe the Republican Party, which initially tried to resist his attitudes, his policies, his hatreds, and evoking all of the worst elements of our country. Maybe that fever will break and we'll get back to a Republican Party that you can have legitimate debates about. But as Liz Cheney said, anyone who supports Trump in the Republican Party is supporting a traitor, supporting someone who tried to overthrow the legitimate process of election in our country. And Kamala Harris, coming from a background as a prosecutor, an attorney general, a United States senator, a vice president, is someone who I think will do everything she can to try to repair the damage and to make it clear that we're all in this together.
I noticed that you said when she wins, not if she wins.
Yes, I did, deliberately. That's what I'm doing, everything I can to make a reality.
There's so much that we could talk about when it comes to what's happening in the United States. But as a former Secretary of State, your eyes will be, of course, firmly trained on what's happening around the world as well, in the world that we're in right now. We're almost at the one-year anniversary of the attack by Hamas on Israel and the subsequent Israel-Hamas war. This week, we have seen an escalation between Israel and Lebanon. It seems to some people like the Middle East is on fire right now. How concerned are you that we are headed for an all-out war in the Middle East?
Well, I'm very concerned about the spread of the conflict that is currently going on between Israel and Hezbollah, and of course, by extension, Hezbollah's patron, Iran. And I fully support the efforts that the United States, France, and others are undertaking right now to try to bring that conflict to an end, plus the continuing efforts to try to achieve a ceasefire and the return of the hostages in Gaza. It's very, very hard going because it's not clear if any of the parties who are directly involved are willing to end the conflicts, to try to come to some diplomatic resolution. But I really appreciate all the efforts, not just by the United States, but, other countries to try to, leverage their influence to help achieve it.
Can you talk a bit more about that? I mean, as former Secretary of State, you know what that work takes. Antony Blinken has been shuttling back and forth between the United States and the Middle East for months now. Why hasn't he been able to move the needle on this conflict and get that ceasefire, get the de-escalation that he and others have been calling for?
Well, I think because at critical moments, Hamas has not wanted to agree to a ceasefire and the return of the hostages, or Israel has not agreed with the terms. I mean, this is really hard work that demands a lot of patience, and it's frustrating to be on the outside looking in, but I've been in the middle of that. I've negotiated a ceasefire between Israel and Hamas, and it is a very delicate balancing act. I mean, partly because no one really knows what the leader of Hamas, Sinwar, actually would agree to. He has not been willing to agree, even when we thought we were on the brink, as people in the administration have said, that there could be a ceasefire and hostage return, and then look to the day after. And I know there are lots of very important conversations going on among many countries in the Middle East who are looking for a way to help rebuild Gaza, to provide security in Gaza. And so there are a lot of players. It's not just the United States who are pushing and prodding and doing everything they can, both to convince Hamas and Israel, and now Hamas, Israel, and Hezbollah, to get back to diplomacy and not conflict.
Do you think the United States has pressured Israel enough? There have been calls for the United States to slow down or stop, for example, weapons sales. The U.S. has, I take your point that there are many other nations involved, but the United States has extraordinary power. Do you think the United States has pushed Israel enough?
Well, I think that, that was floated. It didn't seem to have much of an effect when it was some months ago, because I think that Israel believes that it's in an existential struggle for its security. The attack on October 7th was so profoundly traumatic that, there's a deep concern and worry in Israel. And at the end of the day, any nation state is going to pursue its own interests. And Israel remains an ally of the United States, remains a country that we are committed to its its security. So the United States will continue to stand with Israel, but at the same time, do everything it can to exert pressure on the current leadership of Israel. I'm on record as saying that we need different leadership in Israel. The current leadership should be, by its own people, held to account for what happened on October 7th. We need different leadership in the Palestinian Authority, so there's a real partnership for peace. And obviously, we need to eliminate Hamas as a military threat, and try to begin to work in a regional way to give the people of Gaza a much better opportunity.
Do you think that, I mean, you mentioned the leadership of Israel. Is Benjamin Netanyahu an obstacle to peace?
Yeah. Yes, of course he is. Of course he is. I mean, that is, clear. He has been, protested against by his own people who wanted him to do more to get the hostages home, who wanted him to, pay more attention to the very legitimate needs of the Israeli people. So, yes, I think there's a lot of political turmoil in Israel, but it's a war. People are in the middle of a war. And, you don't change leaders in the middle of a war. It took until the end of the war for the British people to decide they wanted to say thank you very much to Winston Churchill, but wanted different leadership. So this is an extremely complex set of circumstances. And I think it's fair to say that many nations in the region are quietly hoping that Israel can end the threat from Hamas and also the threat from Hezbollah, because they see those two groups as largely reflective of Iranian interests. So this is not just Israel versus Hamas or Israel versus Hezbollah. You have many, many interests at work and many nation states who are quietly doing everything they can to try to get to some kind of resolution.
Mm. This book that you have just written is kind of a reflection on a very public life and what it's like to have lived that life and where you're at right now. You are, I think you would admit, you're a lightning rod in some ways. People have very strong feelings about you even now. And I wonder how you understand that response to you.
Well, look, I've been on the front lines of advocating for change, advocating for women's rights, standing up to what I think accurately called the vast right-wing conspiracy, some 25 years ago. So it comes with the territory. I understand that if you're outspoken, especially if you're, a woman who is willing to speak out against some of the efforts to turn the clock back on women's lives and rights and opportunities, that's going to both engender a reaction and opposition, but also manufacture. Social media platforms now are not just a reflection of actual real people, but of forces at work who are intent upon shaping public opinion in the United States. So it's just a reality of what I see not just happening to me, but to a lot of people in this time of polarization. And it's particularly difficult for women to speak out because of the viral misogyny, the threats that are so ubiquitous on social media. And it's, very concerning to me that you have all this technology-based, gender violence, basically, with the kind of horrific threats against women in the public eye. I've been there a long time, so perhaps my skin is thicker and I understand, the stakes of what we are trying to achieve. But I have no regrets about my willingness to take on a lot of these issues going back a long time.
Let me just end with something that is different. You just published this book, but you have another book that you released with a Canadian icon, national treasure, former radio broadcaster here at the CBC, Louise Penny. You wrote a novel with her, and I just wonder, what's next? That was a huge success. What happens next in this partnership?
We are excited because the book was optioned. We're hoping that a movie or a series is going to be made. We're actively involved in reading drafts of the screenplay. So we hope the next step is to see our characters on the screen in some form.
And perhaps another novel in the future?
Well, we're taking it one step at a time. We're both extremely busy. And, Louise has her next Gamache book in her series coming out in October, and I think she's wrapping up the next one after that. So we stay in close touch because we're good friends, not just collaborators. But we're going to hope we get a good screen adaptation out of our book, which was a labor of love.
Hillary Rodham Clinton, glad to have the chance to talk to you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Good to talk to you.
That was CBC's Canadian exclusive interview with former United States First Lady and Secretary of State Hillary Rodham Clinton. Her book, Something Lost, Something Gained, Reflections on Life, Love and Liberty, is out now.